very important to have good blood pressure, know what your blood pressure is, and if it's high, get it treated. There's medications out there you can take, but there's also a lot of things that you can do before you jump straight to medicine that can lower your blood pressure. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So one thing is diet. There's a lot of dietary things that you can do to lower your blood pressure. Most people know that if you decrease your intake of sodium, so you should never put salt on anything that you eat. Food comes with enough salt in it typically. If you're cooking with salt, you can cook with a little bit of salt, but you should never add more salt to your food. That's just, again, you're just doing more damage than good.
So the amount of salt that you want to monitor, if you've got high blood pressure, you would like to have the salt level in your diet below 2 grams a day. So if you're buying prepackaged food, eating prepackaged food, the way they make it taste better is by putting salt in it. So just take a look at the label and just see how much sodium is in what you're eating, and you'll be surprised, especially in things like white bread. Huge amounts of salt. You just got to be careful of what you're eating.
That's right. And Dan will find you. I know Dan will find you. If you're shopping down those aisles, he said it before, Dan Staten will come find you. He'll hunt you down. Just remember, stay to the outsides of the shop, of the grocery store. Don't go down the aisles, because that's where all the salt is. That's where all the packaged food is that's got an expiration date on it. Limit your intake of that kind of stuff. Shop around the outside edges of the shopping of your grocery store.
Aside from just keeping your weight down with your diet, some people don't get out to the gym every day. And if you're one of those people, then you need to be aware that you're not making it to the gym, so you're not going to burn off those calories as much that day. You've still got the muscle mass and the conditioning that you've been doing up to then, but you can overeat how much exercise you do fairly easily if you're not careful. So make sure that the diet portion of the diet and exercise, that you are focusing on what you're eating and you're eating smart. Cholesterol. That's one of the other risk factors, if you've got high cholesterol.
Yep.
And there have been talks already, about, nutrition and proper intake into your body. The cholesterol numbers that are put out there by the American Academy of Cardiology, there's another one, the Joint National Committee on Cardiovascular Issues, JNC7 is what it's called. And they deal with like hypertension, heart attacks, things like that. They look at all the different avenues of lowering your cholesterol and keeping heart healthy. But there's different numbers that are involved with the cholesterol depending on your disease processes and what's going on in your life. Like we mentioned before, the cardiovascular risk factors will determine what your cholesterol should be at.
Yeah, and cholesterol is another one of those numbers that is good to know. If you don't know what your cholesterol is, or it's been too many years since you've had your cholesterol checked, or you may have never gotten your cholesterol checked because you're a young, healthy guy who never goes to the doctor, it's still not a bad idea to find out what your cholesterol is. Ask your mom, ask your dad what their cholesterol is. They may have high cholesterol and you don't even know it. And so there's a big genetic component to cholesterol. So find out what yours is, talk to your parents, find out what theirs are, and that will help you determine where your cholesterol is at and what you should do about it. But let's talk a little bit about the numbers on cholesterol, because you go to the doctor, you get your blood drawn, and you look at your results of your cholesterol, and it's all probably looks like Japanese to you. You don't understand it. So what are the numbers that you're looking at there?
So a lot of the numbers, they're going to be gibberish to you unless you get educated on it yourself. And there's different types of cholesterol that they look at when we're doing measuring your cholesterol. So the total cholesterol, that's going to be the biggest number. Well, not the biggest number usually, but that's going to be a compilation of everything that we see. And the total cholesterol is going to be then broken down into 4 different types of cholesterol. Good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, cholesterol that causes certain different, medical processes or disease states. And then one of the cholesterols that we measure, we don't really have a good handle yet on if it affects your health in any way. The good cholesterol is also known as high-density lipids, or HDLs. And HDLs, if you think high density, you can think iron is very dense. So when you're pumping iron, that's good. The high-density lipids. And you want that above 45. So anything above 45 is good. If you get it above 65, then that's going to take away one of your cardiovascular risk factors. So if you have something else going on that's bad, then that is actually cardioprotective. So it protects your heart if your HDLs are above 65. And ways to get your HDLs up, excellent ways of doing it, diet, exercise. So omega-3 fatty acids, you get those fish oils. Those are things that are all going to help raise your HDLs. Grains, raise your HDLs, all of those. Bad cholesterol, that's the LDLs, low density lipids. So if you think about low density, you can think fluffy marshmallows. And low density lipids, they float around in your bloodstream and they plug up your heart. So low density lipids are the bad ones. And those are the ones that they really focus on trying to get down, your doctor will. And the number that your cholesterol should be below is what your LDL should be below 160. So 160 for everybody pretty much, at least. Now if you've got a risk factor, those risk factors we mentioned before, if you've got 2 risk factors, you want to get your cholesterol down below 130. If you've got 1 risk factor, it's got to be below 160. 2 risk factors below 130. If you've got 2 risk factors and plus a couple of, 2 risk factors or more, then you need to get it below 100. So there's certain risk factors in there that will make you automatically need to be below 100. So the risk factors that make you need to be below 100 automatically are going to be diabetes. If you've got diabetes, you need to do that. If you've had a heart attack, you need to do that. And then in certain cases, where if you've had a heart attack and you've had a bypass or you've had stents put in, then you need to get it below 70. These are all things that are possible to do with diet and exercise for some people, but most people are going to need help from medication to get it down that low. And in the setting where you've had a heart attack before, you've got diabetes, then these medications have been shown to decrease your risk by about 50% of having a second heart attack.
As you can see, LDL is really the one you want to pay the most attention to. HDLs, you can never have enough HDLs. But LDLs, you definitely want that number to be as low as possible. And like Dan said, the more risk factors you have, the lower you want it to be. But hey, let's just get that thing down as low as we can. It doesn't really matter if we have risk factors or not. But things that will increase your LDL are diet, correct?
Definitely.
And then there also is the genetic component.
Right.
The genetic component always plays a role, so that's why you should always find out from your parents what their cholesterol is if you don't know what yours is. But if you know what yours is and it's a little high, you should be taking a good hard look at your diet, at what you're eating. And it's those saturated fats and things like that, the drive-thrus, those foods that are real accessible and what we have grown to basically, I don't want to say love, but have kind of become our own American demise. Those foods, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. I don't want to name any names, but everybody knows the restaurants we're talking about, and you should just stay away from those kinds of foods, because those will absolutely increase your LDLs. Let's talk about lipids. So lipids is one of those things when you get your cholesterol checked, doctor may tell you, okay, your lipid level is this.
Right. So your total cholesterol level then is what Ryan's referring to, and and your lipids are going to be compiled from your LDLs, your low density lipids, your HDLs, high density lipids, triglycerides, and very low density lipids. The triglycerides and very low density lipids, triglycerides can cause pancreatitis if they're too high. They can also cause you to have little blebs on your skin. Typically those are only going to be elevated in people who have a poor diet, number one. Number two, diabetes who are not well controlled. And then some people just have a familial hypertriglyceridemia, which is an inherited trait. And if you've got that, you probably know about it, and you should definitely be on something to get that lower. But if it's not above 400, you do not need to start taking a medication to treat it. There are medications out there that will lower specifically triglycerides, but really you do not need to take triglyceride lowering medication to prevent pancreatitis or the little blebs on your skin from, they're little collections of triglycerides that look like zits pretty much, but they'll be all over your face, and you don't need to take any medication for those unless your triglycerides are above 400. Although people will start them when they see that, oh wait, they're elevated, they're above 200, I need to start you on this. It's not true. And in the effort of taking as few medications as you can, talk to your doctor about that and say, what is it preventing? Why do I want to lower my triglycerides? And they'll be able to explain to you and talk to you about that in a little more detail.
So what about total cholesterol? What number do we want to see there?
So what the number that's recommended by the American Academy of Cardiologists is you want to get below 200, and really what they're looking at is going to be a total cholesterol over HDL ratio, and they want to see that so that your HDLs are higher up. So the lower, the better ratio you get. If it's like 3 to 1, 2 to 1, then you're into a good ratio, as opposed to if your total cholesterol is 6, your HDL is 1. The ratio is 6 to 1. Then you've got some problems there because you got a lot of cholesterol that's not your HDLs.
Yeah. So go get your cholesterol checked. If it's above 200, you need to reevaluate your cholesterol, and then make sure the doctor breaks it down for you. Right. Ask him what your HDLs were. Ask him what your LDLs were. Ask him what your triglycerides are, because each one of those means something a little bit different. But your total cholesterol should be below 200 for everybody.
If your HDLs are really high, that might push your total cholesterol up, and that's going to be fine. But again, that's when you're going with your ratio. So you get, if it's 2 to 1, hey, you're fine. You're just right where you need to be. Up here in Alaska, there's a lot of them to get diabetes, and obviously that's becoming more and more prevalent in the United States. Absolutely. And I'm sure some of you people out there definitely know a diabetic.
Yeah. It used to be that I didn't know any diabetics, you know what I mean? And it seems like, and it used to be too that you could look at somebody and tell if they were a diabetic or not, or you could tell if they were insulin dependent diabetic, or if they were a non-insulin dependent diabetic, because just by the way they looked. If they were usually extremely overweight, they were probably insulin dependent diabetic. If they were thin, but still they were probably non-insulin dependent diabetic. And it used to be too that insulin dependent diabetes started when you were very, very young, and if you got diabetes in about midlife, it was type 2. It was the non-insulin dependent diabetes. But diabetes has gotten crazy in this country, and it's not true anymore. Yeah, it's not true anymore. And diabetes is really it's become an epidemic in the United States.
Absolutely, and a large portion of that is, the reasons why you are all here at this website, why you are, taking your lives into your own hands and saying, hey, I don't want to deal with this anymore.